Hey, Sudi, thanks so much for making time today. I'm really excited to finally get a chance to talk to you. It's been so many years.
Yes, yes, I'm excited too. Good to see
Good,
you.
good. You're welcome. So, start out by telling me and everybody who's watching this, what are you up to today? What keeps you busy?
So right now, professionally, right, I am with AWS, specifically AWS Managed Services. I'm a senior software development manager there. So what that means is usually we use the term two pizza teams. So we organize around these small teams that are self-sufficient. They have product management, program management, development, everything together. So I have multiple two pizza teams under me, and we develop software, right? So these are very specific software for AWS managed services. We help our clients operate their AWS infrastructure, right? So we write essentially automation, automatic remediation, automatic logging, monitoring, alerting, all that. So that's where kind of my daytime professional life goes in. And I am also doing on the side, I'm teaching. This for the first time, this first semester, a course on machine learning in University of Southern California, Marshall School of Business. So I just finished my last class, and then and the final exam is on December 10th. So that has taken up a lot of time this semester to prepare, talk to students, all that.
Oh, that's awesome. On the AWS side, what do you enjoy most about the job?
I think we use this term in AWS called builder, right? And AWS uses it in a very broad sense, right? So all of us are building something. I think I didn't use this word before I joined AWS, but just developing a product, right? So we actually are creating something that is used by a whole bunch of people to make their lives easier. That I think is the most kind of satisfying thing, that we are thinking about the requirements, designing something to be useful, designing the UX in some cases, and then actually seeing the work that once we deploy it, other people are using. We are getting comments, and sometimes not necessarily great comments, but many times it's just useful. That's that actually, for me, that's a great satisfaction.
Oh, nice. So back when you were in college studying, you went to college in India, as I recall, correct?
Yes, I did my
IIT?
master's in physics in IIT. Yes.
Yep. So back then you said, one day I'm going to be an AWS lead senior developer and build apps for cloud computing, right?
So I wanted to be a physicist. My uncle was one of the most influential person in my life. I think when we were working together, I'm sure I've mentioned my uncle. He was a particle physicist, now retired. So I wanted to be a physicist. So I finished my master's, applied here. I got a couple of scholarships, one in the physics department for my doctorate and one in the biophysics department. Then long conversation with all the knowledgeable well-wishers, and everybody said bio is the thing. Go for biophysics, not just physics. So I ended up coming to Ohio State University to be a biophysicist, be a professor, research and all that. That was my intention.
Right. So what went wrong? Why'd you change? Nothing wrong. It's just why'd you change?
Yeah, I think So I would put it as maybe something actually went right. So on a real note, right? I met my wife. I mean, she was there doing her PhD in biochemistry. I met her. I fell in love fairly quickly, wanted to get married. And I remember still that my TA, the scholarship was $800 per month. And I had obligations. I was sending money home. That was just not enough to me, at least, to get married at that salary. So and then on top of that, I was realizing that a lot of PhD is really hard work and a little bit of inspiration, a little bit of kind of challenging problem solving, which I was interested in. But I got a sense that 70-80% of the work is just the grunt work of kind of writing the paper. So combine the two, I felt like time for me to just get a job and get on with it, right? So and that's how I knew a little bit of C programming. I reached out to a few people I knew, and then my first job was in California. So I moved from Columbus, Ohio, to Los Angeles, California, with my first job as essentially a smart guy who can figure everything out. So I was doing system administration, I was doing Visual Basic coding, C coding, whatever. They just threw everything at me. I even put their network together on one night. I still remember I stayed up all night and just basically upgraded the network to a modern router and everything, right? So I learned a lot. It was very, very challenging, but I was young. I was basically staying up at night, reading and learning and practicing all that. So it was really, really fun. I never regretted it. It's not, it's just a different path.
Right. Just different path, it was a different choice. How long did you stay doing that?
Not very long, 2 years. I kind of felt like in 2 years, I read many of the computer science books that people would normally read if they did graduation. So I had a fairly good technical background. So I was kind of ready to start exploring. I also accidentally got involved in data warehousing project. Again, same idea. They needed somebody, and then I was the one who could figure things out. So I said, okay, you are also part of this project. This was in one of the large banks in Los Angeles. At that time, a large data warehouse. So I jumped in and I learned a lot about the technology and how data warehouses are built, etc. So that actually, right now in my AWS job, I own the data platform for our division. So I have a whole team of data engineers, business intelligence engineers, some scientists, basically focused on building the platform and making data available for other people to consume. So that's the thread that connects, I think, my first job to my last job, really.
Right. Oh, cool. So, and what'd you do in between?
So in between, interesting, right? So if you remember, you had actually sponsored my MBA at University of Chicago. So I got a sense at that time that, technology can only get you up to a certain point. So you really, to progress and go higher, you need the business background. So I did my MBA at University of Chicago. Then right after I finished my MBA, I got a job with Microsoft as a product manager. That was my first kind of foray into that totally different kind of job than what I was really hands-on keyboard technical person. I didn't even have the business language. If you talk to me about marketing, customer acquisition, customer conversion, I had no idea what those are. So the MBA, I think, gave me that language, opened up the door to Microsoft, I think, because at that time, at least, MBA was a requirement for a product manager. Right now, that's no longer the case. Right now, there is a specific job description that is PMT. So product management, product manager technical. And PM. So PMs are more business focused, more commercial focused, and PMT are more technology focused. And we work with PMTs. So those jobs don't need MBA. So I was kind of a PMT when I joined Microsoft, but still needed an MBA. After that, again, life took me in another direction. My parents were falling sick in India. My wife's parents were falling sick in India. I was not sure if I should be here or be there. So I made a move. I said, okay, let's just move closer. So I went to Singapore, worked there for a year with business objects at that time, a totally different job. It had nothing to do with my background. I was the director for partner and alliances for Asia Pacific and Japan. So all I did there is just travel. Singapore is small, right? So the main business was in Australia, China, Japan. So I basically traveled, I think, 140,000 miles in 9 months. Wow. Yeah. So I went to Beijing 5 times, Sydney 5 times. But I grew a lot in that, right? So, and I went on stage and presented to these people about business objects, products. So in terms of, I think, confidence, what you could or could not do, you get a sense, right, when you stretch in this type of situation. And that international experience always is absolutely fascinating because people do work, and it actually makes you aware that people are the way they work is very different in different parts of the world. And then I said, okay, Singapore is close to India, but I really need to be there next to my parents. So we moved back to India, and I didn't really want to work there. So I started up my own own shop. It was a business intelligence. Now we call it data engineering, and a little bit of statistics with SaaS. Started with me, my wife, no money from outside. We put a little bit of our money, started recruiting, no clients. I trained maybe 15 people, hired them. They're from not necessarily the brightest, but they were sharp, but didn't have the polish, didn't have the English, didn't have all the things you need to be a consultant. So 6 months of training, which I personally kind of developed with my wife and trained them. And then I had, again, contacts. I started getting one customer at a time. So we did this for some time. I think we officially stopped it in 2013. We started in 2007.
Okay.
So some years were great. We grew up to 50 people. We made money. But in a small company, right? So everywhere we went, all our customers were US based. Every customer already had this large consulting companies in there, TCS and Infosys. And we were there mainly because of me and the specific focus on business intelligence and data engineering. But there was always pressure, competitive pressure. And at one point I had 7 customers, right? With 50 people, 7 customers. At one point I lost 3 almost back to back accidentally. I mean, CEO change, whatever, CIO change, I think. And so I knew that I could not recover. It took me a while to build up the base, and I didn't have a salesperson. That's what I was not particularly good at. I mean, if you gave me a project, I was good at kind of doing that, but going and asking for a project or getting and chasing a project was not my strength, I would say.
Right.
So then we tried a little bit at developing some software. That another connection to my current job, I learned a lot. So I started coding, and we developed like a restaurant, essentially purchasing optimization software. Didn't really go anywhere. We did a beta. I just didn't have enough people and money. Again, I didn't take any money from anybody. Not that it was available. It was not. And I didn't try hard. I said, I want to risk my own money. And then at one point we kind of ran out. We said, all right, let's go back. Let's go back and pay check at the end of the month in the bank, right? Let's go back to safety. But I had marketable skills. So I went back and then again, consulting was the most natural place for me because that's essentially what I was doing. So I joined Cloud Technology Partners that was focused on AWS Cloud. So I did large scale cloud migration, data platform migration, building data lakes, building data warehouses, because I also kept upgrading myself. So that's the interesting part of my story, really, because I did traditional data platform, right? Data warehouse for a long time. But then this big data came in. So all I did is I essentially bought a couple of books. I bought a big fat computer, started playing, and I soon realized I know a lot about these things just by doing that, right? And then internet, you hear all these videos and learn. So I really put a concerted effort to just be upgraded. Then after that, cloud, big data, cloud, and then machine learning, right? So I jumped in because I had some interest. I did in my predictive, my entrepreneurship days, I did some modeling with some clients, simple statistical modeling, but then deep learning came, and I had some background through physics and artificial neural networks, Ising model, if you remember. So I jumped in and I learned and upgraded my deep learning knowledge. And then in Deloitte, I joined Deloitte as a managing director partner. I was their machine learning lead in the cloud engineering department, just because I kind of learned. I didn't really do a deep learning project at that time, but I just knew a lot about it, right? So, and then we started doing these projects, and of course, my background in data projects and cloud projects really helped. And then made a transition. Then after Deloitte, I always kind of was curious. People talk about these FANG companies, AWS especially, because I was last 7 years, all my projects were on AWS, right? So then opportunity came by. I wasn't looking. They called me and asked, are you interested? And then it just happened. I prepared very hard for the interview and got a job in the professional services, right? Which I realized after I joined AWS that that's not really a technology job. That's a pure people management job. I had like 70, 80 people under me, other practice managers reporting to me, but it was just that, right? I was not involved in technology discussion or design discussion, which is not me, right? I would rather do that,
right.
Because it just makes me feel good. to talk about building something, right?
Right.
Then I switched. So I knew that engineering would be the right place for me. It was not easy because professional service. Not I don't have traditional software development engineering background, but I have enough technology under my belt to so that they understood that I will be able to handle the technology requirements for the job. And I'm very happy I made the switch because every day that's what we are doing, right? So we are actually thinking about building new stuff, new features. And
Right. So would you say you're on Sudi 3.0, 4.0? What I've lost track of how many upgrades.
yeah. I mean, it's 5.0 maybe because you almost look at it this way, right? So pure tech, right? Pure tech, everything tech. From there to that flavor of MBA and product management. From there to the entrepreneurship for 7-8 years. From there to, I would say, like a partner, managing director, consulting, right? So where you're really doing, so I had really large clients and building projects with teams of 100 people, some in India, some here, etc. And then finally, I would say that software development. So that would be 5, I think.
Yeah, well, so my parting question for you, Sudi, is what's Sudi 6.0 look like?
Yeah, I think I just think that now, right? So I own features of a broader project. So what would be really interesting is owning a full end-to-end product portfolio, right? So right now I'm a contributor in a product suite that goes to the customer.
Right.
So what would be interesting is to be able to, and I could potentially just not worry about other components because I'm so focused on my thing, which we try not to, right? You want to elevate yourself and understand your job in the context of the overall problem that you're trying to solve. So I think my next step would be that actually own an end-to-end product that solves a concrete large customer problem like we are doing in AWS managed services.
So my last question is hopefully the hardest one for you to answer.
Sure.
As you look through your career, what insight, what advice might you have for somebody who is earlier in their career and trying to figure out what they want to do? As you think about your journey, what comes to mind of how you've been successful?
Yeah, but I feel like if you can make up your mind sooner, and that's the hardest thing to do, right? The path you will follow and sticking to it is, I think, what I didn't do, right? So I kind of tried this and tried that, and then eventually I converged. But I think if I could converge there earlier, I would have been in a better place. Is what in general, I don't know, better place, but I would have been in a
faster.
In that mode, right? So that's one thing I think. And the second suggestion is that one should keep learning. This field is, especially if you're in tech, right? I know people who want to focus on their expertise and they want to cash on their expertise, but that also comes with the challenge of being just expert of one thing, and that's not what we do. And we hire people for potential, and every engineer here just learning new things. So that should be really the focus, and you should develop a framework to absorb, however complex, right, new knowledge at a various level. And as you can keep trying, go deeper and deeper. That has helped me a lot, right? Just that ability, because at my age, I have seen many very, very smart people who just don't feel like doing that anymore. They did it, but now they're higher up. But that, I think they miss out on, like, let's say, large language models. So one of the biggest developments. Many people don't even know what they are, right? So I feel like, not that I'm an expert in it, but a little bit I know, it just makes me feel good. That's all.
That's awesome. Sudi, thank you so much for sharing your time and your path and the inspiration you have. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, same here, David. Nice catching up with you. Can I say one more thing?
Sure.
So another thing I just want to mention that has helped me is, and I was recently reading about some life advice from somebody, which kind of tallied. So I also picked up a few things that are not related to work. So for example, I play the flamenco and classical guitar now for the last 10 years. And that really allows me to disconnect from work, right? So for that 1 hour I'm practicing, for 2 hours I'm playing the guitar. I think we are all in a very high stress kind of work environment. So having something, some deep interest that you can focus on, could be tennis. I am also, the other thing I focus on is tennis. So it could be, because when you are doing that, work is not going to be able to come to your head, and that helps, that compartmentalization and having these separate kind of enjoyment sources which are deep has really helped me.
Oh, excellent. Excellent. Good. Well, thank you so much, Sudi.
Thanks, David. Talk soon. Bye-bye.